the prerequisite module of Algebra 2 is solving linear equations. It has one objective. We're going to solve single and multi-step equations. I'm going to do 3 different examples, and I'm going to have you then do 3 examples on your own to check your understanding. And after that, I'm going to ask you to complete 8 problems on this following worksheet. Your goal is to get mastery level of 8 out of 8. So to begin, the first problem that I'm going to do is number 2. And whenever you're solving a linear equation, it's, again, a skill you learned and hopefully mastered in Algebra 1. There is an unknown variable. You have to figure out what that variable equals to actually solve the equation. So the goal is always to get the variable by itself on whatever side that it exists on. So the first question I ask myself is, what side of the equation does the variable live? Or where does it live? In this case, in number 2, 6 equals p divided by 10. It's on the right side of the equation. So I have to get everything on the right side of the equation that's not the variable to the left side of the equation, because I need the variable to be by itself. So this step will look different depending on what operation goes along with the variable. If you notice in number 1, x plus 1 equals 4. X plus 1 is different than p divided by 10. And so to get rid of the divided by 10, I'm going to have to do something different than to get rid of the plus 1 in number 1. So that's the first question, though, is where does it live? It lives on the right side, so I need to get p alone on the right side. Right now it's not alone on the right side. The divided by 10 is also with it. In order to get rid of anything, you have to do the opposite of what's happening there. Since it's division, p divided by 10, I'm going to have to multiply by 10 in order to cancel out that division of 10. Whatever I do to one side of the equation, I have to do to the other side of the equation as well. That is a basic algebra principle. And so when I do that step, multiply by 10, these 10s cancel out. There's a 10 on top and a 10 on the bottom. They go away, and then 10 times 6 is 60. Now my final answer then is 60. I know that to be true because now p is by itself. P equals 60 is my final answer. It's what's known as a single step linear equation. I solved for p. It took me 1 step to do so. Multi-step linear equations are a little bit more extensive to solve, and I'm going to show you an example in just a second. Go ahead and pause it, though, and try number 4 on your own. Alright, these are my steps for number 4. It was x divided by 19 equals negative 6. And so in order to get x by itself, it lives on the left side of the equation, I have to multiply each side of the equation by 19. 19 times x over 19 makes these 19s go away. So that's how I just got a single x over here. And negative 6 times 19 is a negative 114. So that is my final answer. Moving right along, I'm going to do number 7 and have you try number 8. This is where it gets a little bit more extensive because these are multi-step problems. So there's, I guess, just a little bit more room for error because there's more math to be done. Now, the first thing to consider when working with multi-step linear equations is to, what I put in red over there, move variables to one side of the equal sign and numbers to the other side. It does not matter what side you pick for variables or what side you pick for numbers, but by the end of this step, you should only have variables on one side of the equal sign and numbers on the other side to then solve for the actual variable. So I'm going to do number 7. I'll have you do number 8 on your own. Number 7, I have n plus 7 plus 3 equals negative 5n minus 2. So the big thing that jumps out at me here is that I see numbers on both the left and right hand side, and I see variables on both the left and right hand side. So in this case, I need to do this step of moving variables to one side, numbers to the other side of the equal sign. And even before that, and this is going to happen as well for multi-step equations, is if you notice on the left hand side of the equal sign, I have a 7 plus a 3. I need to combine like terms in order to simplify this process. And so I'm going to do this math before I actually start moving variables and numbers around. So I have my first step. I'm going to rewrite everything. N, 7 plus 3 is 10. So now I have n plus 10 equals negative 5n minus 2. Now that there's a variable and a number on the left side and a variable and the number on the right side, I can go ahead and start moving things around. And please note that I consider, there's questions sometimes of that negative 5n. Negative 5 is a number, but in this case it's a coefficient because it is paired with a variable. So I consider that to be a variable. That's going to go with the n on the left-hand side. And I mentioned earlier, it doesn't matter where you move variables to, what side of the equal sign or where you move numbers to. I'm going to start with the variables, and I'm going to pick to move the variables to the left-hand side. So that means on the right-hand side I have this negative 5n. Because it is a negative 5n, and the opposite of negative is positive, I have to add 5n to that, because I want to cancel it out. I want to make it go away on that side. So whatever I do to one side of the equation, I have to do to the other side, so I added 5n. I'm going to line this up exactly under the other variable on the other side to keep my work nice and neat. So I'm going to add 5n over here as well. And if you get good at this, you can do 2 steps in one. I'm going to show you how to do each step individually. N plus 5n. Again, if you remember combining like terms, this is technically 1n. So 1n plus 5n is 6n. And then I still have this 10 that I didn't do anything with, so I'll drop it down. Plus 10 equals negative 5n plus 5n. They cancel out, so I'm left with negative 2 on the right-hand side. Now I just have variables on my left-hand side. And so in order to get the variables alone on that left-hand side, I have to move the number 10 over to the right-hand side in order to satisfy that step of having variables on one side, numbers on the other. So it's a plus 10. In order to get rid of a plus, I have to do subtraction. Minus 10 on the left side, and then minus 10 on the right side. And again, I line it up directly underneath that negative 2. So plus 10 minus 10, they cancel out. I'm left with 6n on my left-hand side. And then negative 2 minus 10 is a negative 12. And now I'm down to the process we did in the first example. It's a single-step process to solve for the actual variable at this point. And I have 6n equals negative 12. That 6 and that n, to get n by itself, the 6 is multiplying with the n. So I'm going to divide by 6. Get rid of the multiplication. Whenever I do one side, I have to do the other. Negative 12 divided by 6. These 6's cancel out, so I get n equals negative 12 divided by 6 is a negative 2. That is my final answer. If you would like to check your work, if you plug negative 2 back in for these n's out there, they would equal each side of the equation out with each other. So go ahead and pause the video and try number 8 on your own. Well, you should have paused the video to try number 8 on your own. I have showed the work that I have done to get my answer of m equals 8. Again, it might not look exactly like what you did. I chose to move the 3m first. You could have chose to move anything first. But again, the goal in the process I had in mind was to get numbers on one side, variables on the other. I moved variables from the right-hand side to the left-hand side in this step, right here. And then I moved my numbers, the 1, I subtracted over to the other side, so then I had only variables on one side, only numbers on the other side. And in this case, that actually solved the equation. So again, if you didn't get that for your answer, please raise your hand so we can go over it. All right, one more example in this video. I'm going to do number 6, and I'll have you do the other number 6. I just wanted to show you this problem as well because this involves one more step in the process called distribution. If you notice on the right-hand side of number 6, what would jump out to me is that those parentheses, the negative 3 parenthesis m minus 1. What that means is it's asking to multiply that negative 3 into that m minus 1 binomial. And you've heard this word before. We're going to distribute that negative 3 into the m minus 1. So I just wanted to show you that process. And then the remaining part of this solving this equation is very similar to what we just did. But the first step then, in this process, is to distribute that negative 3 into both of those terms. Negative 3 times m equals a negative 3m. And then negative 3 times a negative 1 Negative times a negative becomes a positive, so it's a positive 3. So I'll write plus 3. Negative 3 times a negative 1 is a positive 3. And I didn't do anything to this side, so I'm just going to drop it down. 13 minus 8n. At this point, it is the same thing. A couple more steps to solve the thing. I have to get variables on one side, numbers on the other side. Again, it does not matter what you choose first. I'm going to choose to move the numbers first this time. I'm going to choose to move the 13. It is a positive 13, so I'm going to subtract 13 from that. And then I have to go over and line it up with the other number on the right-hand side of the equal sign. Subtract 13 from the 3. 13 minus 13 is 0. It goes away, so I'm left with negative 8m equals negative 3m. 3 plus a negative 13 is a negative 10. So negative 3m minus 10. So now I have the only set of numbers I have left exist on the right-hand side, meaning that I have to move my variables to the left-hand side because I have to balance out the equation. So negative 3m, in order to get rid of negative 3m on the right-hand side, I have to add 3m. And then add 3m to the left-hand side. Negative 3m plus 3m cancels out, equals 0. Negative 8m plus 3m is a negative 5m, equals then, what's left on the right-hand side? Negative 10. One last step, the negative 5 and the m. Negative 5 is multiplying with that m, so in order to get m by itself, the ultimate goal of solving any equation to get the variable by itself, I have to divide by negative 5 because it's being multiplied. And I have to do that to both sides. So finally, m equals, negative 5's go away, negative 10 divided by negative 5 is positive 2, because same with multiplication, dividing by two negatives turns it positive. That is my final answer. Go ahead and pause the video and try number 6 on your own. So here's my work for number 6. Please check your work with mine. Again, it might not look the exact same depending on what you chose to move first, but this step right here is the difference in these problems, and so that should look the exact same as mine. I had to distribute that 5 into the negative 3x plus 7. 5 times negative 3x is a negative 15x. 5 times a 7 is a positive 35. So that should look the same, and then from there, depending on what you chose to move first, it might look a little different. But you should arrive at the answer of x equals 6. If you did not get x equals 6, please raise your hand so we can come discuss the problem together. At this point, I'll ask you to do the remaining 8 problems. Again, your goal should be 8 out of 8 to master this subject in order to move on to the next one.